Hello, Exiles. This is Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming, and welcome to another Path of Exile video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over a champion using Frostblades Heatshiver. It is going to be quite differently set up, but I'm basically exploring the different options available to different ascendancies to see if they can pull off the Frostblades build that I did on my Trickster. If you want to see my Trickster, there's a lot of videos for it on my channel, and I'll link the playlist for those, including the guides and the playthroughs that I did in Mayhem League and Solo Selfbound. And yeah, I'll be getting into a bunch of different ascendancies. I've kind of written off 4 different ascendancies at the moment. The next one I'm planning to do is Occultist, which I'm looking forward to given the balance manifesto that just got put out on curses and the changes on the Occultist, and I'll kind of go over how it performs now and how I expect it to perform after the different changes. But we're focusing on champion right now. I'm just going to do a tier 16 alleyways with not particularly difficult modifiers, but a little bit of enfeeble to test our damage a little bit, and then also some physical as extra on top of that. And we'll just see how that goes. Now, a lot of things are very different about this build. I'm going to tell you right out of the gate that this one is going to be a lot more difficult to get into pinnacle bosses specifically. So, and I'll kind of explain why that ended up being the case. However, there are some benefits for this one as well, being that you get Fortify automatically, which means you don't have to get the Fortify influence on your body armor, which means you get tankier much quicker. However, there's also some big drawbacks here, mostly the placement on the where this build is placed as far as on the skill tree. Also, another nice thing about this is you can run Wrath of the Cosmos, which is actually getting changed next patch, so that's actually not super relevant. But the increased damage taken is something that you can deal with a little bit more than you could with the other one. I'm not going to bother getting duplicate divination cards. I'll probably just skip out on like the Legion too, because Alleyways is a really terrible map for Legion anyway. Probably not, even though I am a spec into Legion and could get emblems out of it. I'm not going to bother. Just terrible layout. Kind of a waste of time to be doing it on this. I normally do like dunes, so right there. I normally do dunes or some other open map layout for my build. But as you can see, the clear is pretty good. I got a Harbinger here. I'm starting to put Harbingers on my maps because I would like to get a bunch of Exalted and Annulment Orbs. Okay, this guy is Gargantuan. Got a little bit different flask setup as well, out of necessity, and I'll go over that. Got some Annul Shards. Yeah, I basically just want to get some Annuls and Exalts, and Harbinger is going to help me with that, because this is Solo Selfbound. The reason I decided to run this on Solo Selfbound is because other than one other unique that is mandatory, I had everything else. So I just wanted to try that out. Specifically the belt. I'm sure many of you who have played Champion before know exactly which belt that I'm talking about. Yeah, I don't really want to do those altars. I would have gotten like the regular has a chance to drop additional one, but I'm not going to bother making the map boss harder for reasons I will also go over. I'm not going to get the mirror for now. That's fine. All right, and then we have the boss. Go ahead and put down my stuff. Try to hit my orb. There you go. And I'll just hit all of my flasks. Drop my Ancestor Warchief. And as you can see, the damage comparatively to Trickster is much lower. And I think maybe you could reach similar levels. Got a lot of embers here, which is good. Not that many grands though, unfortunately. Okay, So that's the clear. Single target damage is insanely lower than it is on Trickster, and I will talk about why. Go over the gear first. So having Fortify built in using Fortitude here on Champion allowed me to use a body armor that uses basically gets aura effect. One of the benefits of Champion is specifically Inspiration gives 30% aura effect, which is a very large amount, and Fortify existing means I can scale that even further. So as a result, I'm running a lot of auras. I also get to run Defiance Banner for free, which is nice as well. And I've decided to run a Physical Claw. Now, this is about as good as I could do on solo self-found. I even had to Exalt Slam the crit chance, otherwise I wouldn't have had a good Physical Claw. So, but the hard part is the intelligence requirement, so I actually have to waste a point and also my anoint to get extra intelligence. So that's a little bit of a bummer. I also have intelligence on a jewel on top of that. But the normal stuff is here. I have Heatshiver. I have Yoke of Suffering. I also have Southbound, which becomes mandatory in this build because I do not have enough points because of the placement on the tree to get Elemental Focus, which would give me duration. And also because I'm going physical and scaling Hatred through Aura Effect, I actually took the physical converted to cold damage instead of the freeze duration. I probably could take freeze duration and maybe need to do pinnacle bosses. Honestly, even though I'll lose a fairly substantial amount of damage, I think the freeze duration makes up for it. And I also pretty much have to run freeze duration. Now, luckily, I do have an attack speed crit multi with freeze duration on solo self-found, so I was able to put that in, and I do gain a decent amount of damage from this jewel as well. But otherwise, it would be very difficult to get enough freeze duration, even to freeze like map bosses. So the DPS on this thing, I guess I'll just go over all the gear before I explain further. Heatshiver, Yoke of Suffering with versatility, Physical Claw with crit chance and attack speed, pretty high attack speed, not as high as I'd like, but pretty high. Tier 2, it's actually Tier 1. This is just a slow claw base. It's 1.5 instead of 1.6, which would be my preference. And then I have 2 amethyst rings. One of the hard things about this build is because perseverance, which is the other thing here. So perseverance gives us attack damage per 200 of our lowest armor and evasion rating. Armor, I currently have 40,000 armor and 46,000 evasion rating without flasks up, and with flasks up 57.5k armor and 61.9k. However, I have short duration on my basalt flask, which makes it a little harder to keep up, and I have to have it as a used when freeze immunity flask because of how hard it is to get ailment immunity. I kind of have to path through here instead of through here, which means I can't get crystal skin. I will be able to get these, and I got pretty lucky in that I have a chance to avoid being frozen and chilled on Conqueror's efficiency. But even still, I am pretty vulnerable to freeze and chill. Body armor is a Desert Brigadine, which is one of the higher tiers. That I happen to get this as a 6-link. So I think there's one tier higher as far as like the balanced armor evasion ones that I could have gotten, and ideally I'd be getting that. But it has the resistances that I need. Resistances have been a bit of a struggle. I actually spec'd into Cloth and Chain for the dual benefit of getting a bunch of resistances for a while. And currently I have Survivalist for my Grace Mana Reservation efficiency rather than Revenge of the Hunted, which leaves me at a pretty low life total. Now, even though I have 3,000, I actually went all the way up to 92 with 2,800 life. And part of that is because this just has so much mitigation that you can kind of get away with that. So that's one of the nice things about this, but because we have such a low life total, we're very susceptible to damage over time, which is why, once again, the Pantheon for Soul of Aracali, including the Captured Void anomaly, is so important. Also, I'm running Soul of Abrath with the Unaffected by Burning Ground for that reason on top of that. So there's a lot of things, but I basically have to run 2 Amethyst rings in this as well to get a decent amount of chaos resistance, which kind of hurts DPS a little bit. You may also notice that I only have 3 Frenzy charges, and thus I am not running Ice Bite. This build is so point starved that in order to get 100% spell suppression, because I wasn't able to get one on a shield that had the mana reservation efficiency that I need to have Hatred, Grace, and Determination in to run 3 50% auras in this build, and that's including running both Charisma and Champion of the Cause, even with this little extra node, and also Conqueror's efficiency. So Conqueror's efficiency is not going to be in the game anymore, but they did confirm that we'll be able to get mana reservation efficiency on regular jewels. So it's possible we'll get a much better jewel in this slot in the next patch, because we'll be able to roll like life and damage mods, freeze duration, all sorts of stuff like that, as well as the efficiency. So that's really nice there. But yeah, just life, spell suppress, a couple resists, and tried to get as much armor and evasion as I could. Unfortunately, that ended up not being a whole lot. I would like to Exalt Slam this. It's currently 5 mod, but I don't have any more Exalts. I've been using a lot for like crafting and stuff, and only have 8 Exalt shards. Ideally, I would hope to Exalt Slam high flat, I guess, would be good, or just high percentage. Either one would be fine. Armor and evasion, but I guess we'll see. Also, like the hybrid armor life roll would be good as well, especially if it's high tier, just because having more life would be ideal as well. But yeah, I have 1 minus mana cost. I couldn't fit both of them because I needed the fire chaos resist, and this was about as good as I could do, unfortunately. Have to run Atziri's Step as well. It's kind of become mandatory. The worst thing about this build is because of all of the freeze duration we're missing out on, Southbound becomes 100% mandatory. It's no longer an optional thing. I don't think you'll ever reach a damage threshold either that would not make this absolutely mandatory. So just another kind of drawback. Basically, there's a lot of hoops to jump through in this build. Yeah, then I have a hybrid shield with block chance, life, reservation efficiency. It's not ideal either, but it's about as good as we could get. Good news is, don't get hit by attacks that often. Really, I haven't died too much. I have definitely died on this character 47 times. So, you know, it's not deathless. I think if you were more careful and built more life, you could do this on hardcore, but the biggest problem is you would be missing out on even more damage, which would be a big problem. So, flask setup, I just have a Stibnite flask with attack speed and chance to gain a flask charge when you deal crit strike. Getting max crit strike has been a real struggle on this. Diamond flask with evasion and chance to gain charge when you deal crit strike. I have this unfortunate basalt flask. I might want to switch these over. And then this granite flask has movement speed. I don't really need the movement speed. I could probably get more crit chance on it. And obviously I have a lot of alterations to try to roll that. This is a level 83 granite, I guess. So that would be one way to get more crit chance, which would help a lot. But yeah, just for a couple of days putting this character together, I think I did an alright job. I'll go over the skill tree now and show you kind of why this is so difficult. So we have to stretch all the way over here. And because of all the mandatory uniques, we also have to make sure our resistances are capped, which puts a lot more of a constraint on our different pieces of gear. Now in Trade League, this might be less of an issue because you could get something with a really outstanding amount of resistances. You could also get higher rolled, like my Yoke of Suffering's resistances are not great. You could get higher rolls on that, get a perfectly rolled heat shiver. There's a lot of things you could do. It's possible that in hardcore you might even have to drop hatred for like purity of elements, which would drop your damage even lower. So that is another thing. And then you would kind of just do a flat cold damage like you would like the trickster version, basically. So something closer to maybe this in terms of with the attacks with this weapon penetrate elemental resistance. Another problem with being so point starved, I wasn't able to get forces of nature. I wasn't able to get frenetic. Now you'll notice I have some things here like tribal fury, which allows me to not have to do a gem swap. That is 5 points, but those 5 points wouldn't be enough to really make a difference. Like if I drop some of the optional stuff like tribal fury, graceful assault, and just did a gem swap, I could fit in the penetration and the frenzy charges, which if I had all 6 of them, Ice Spite would be a lot stronger than what I have. Currently have Frostblades, Nightblade, Multi-Strike, Inspiration, elemental damage with attacks, and Trinity. Trinity for pinnacle bosses I have to swap out for crit damage or something else, because probably crit damage. Maybe crit strikes even, but probably crit damage. Just because I can't actually reliably freeze pinnacle bosses with this build. While it does have an effective HP pool of like 2.5 times greater than the Trickster does, it's more susceptible to damage over time, so that's actually not as great as you would think it would be. The extra HP pool, because Heartstopper gives the huge less damage taken 50% of the time, which this does not have. One of the options to mitigate it would be to take Rampart and then get the reduced damage over time taken while you have at least fortification. This is a lot of damage, but once again, just being point starved is hard. We have to get determination reservation efficiency to fit that in as well, which means we have to take Soul of Steel. So that's points over there that we kind of have to use. I mean, Soul of Steel is very good, of course, because it gives max all elemental resistance as well. But yeah, there's just so much this build needs to do. I need Leech, and the only thing, like, I have to do this for 1 point rather than going over here to the higher amount of Leech for 2 points, which is also a bit of a problem. Lethal Pride I have on this character is mostly focused on defenses with a little bit of offense, so I do have a couple of percent strength that I did have, but it's mostly I have this crit chance right here, then the rest is like life, percent strength, life regen. I don't have any double damage mods on here, but even if I did have double damage mods, I don't think it would help enough. And if I did get quick step, I could get +1 max fortification, which would actually do nothing here. And then on the frenzy charge, I have more increased strength. Because we're scaling physical damage, strength is actually pretty good because we get 1 melee damage per 5 strength, 1% increased melee physical damage specifically. But yeah, this overall just a little bit of a problem. Just missing out on intelligence. Like, I can't really afford the points to path up here. I can't even take some of the more efficient life nodes like Blood Drinker and Revenge of the Hunted because I need to fit so much stuff in. So overall, I would say I wouldn't recommend this. The Trickster is much, much better just because of its place on the tree. I'm hoping the Occultist will be better because even though we'll have to either anoint Tribal Fury or get the additional strikes on a jewel, Occultist is going to have a lot of interesting things. So we're going to path out here and go through here, but that'll put us close to Fingers of Frost, meaning we might not have to go all the way down here to grab this. You know, if we're in the area, we may anyway, but having this is going to give so much more freeze duration than we would normally have. And it also puts us closer to all of the intelligence stuff. We need less strength, and the our belt and the Lethal Pride will pretty much cover strength requirements. So I think this will be a more interesting build because of the way that it paths. And also, Occultist has another thing going for it in that it's immune to freeze and chill automatically. So it's going to have that going as well, along with 2 more damage multipliers in the form of minus cold, which I guess isn't more damage multiplier with Heat Shiver, but I have a very specific idea in mind for that. So yeah, overall, you could run this in hardcore, but just keep in mind, if you're playing hardcore solo self-found, it could take weeks of farming and crafting if you are a skilled crafter and a skilled farmer, and you know exactly what you're looking for, just to reach the point where you can barely start doing pinnacles. Whereas the Trickster, in solo self-found, I was able to get to the point where I could easily and comfortably do pinnacle bosses completely fresh on solo self-found within 5 or 6 days, something like that. So the difference is going to be very stark there, but you're going to be a lot more survivable. So it is possible, but you might just be better off playing something else like your Bone Shatter champion or whatever. There's probably just way better things you could do that are less gear reliant. And of course, in solo self-found hardcore, you're still going to have to farm the core items for the build. Some of the potential I could see, I think this could potentially scale very, very high in Trade League with high gear. So Trickster can get to the point where it trivializes pinnacle bosses on less than 10 divines. This, for entry level, getting into pinnacle bosses is probably going to be 40 to 50 divines, but you can get much higher, much stronger everything, really. You could get grand crafted on the aura effect and everything here. You could get much higher armor with the similar other stats on armor and evasion on your body armor and your shield. You could get just much better jewelry, which would mean you have to jump through less hoops. You could get double corrupted southbound on it, which could give flat crit chance and some other beneficial kind of stat, like maybe percent life or something. You could get double corrupted at Ziri's step, double it'd be a lot easier to get your lab enchant on your helmet, which would give a lot of damage, and then possibly even get that double corrupted. Everything would just be a ton easier, but also very, very expensive. So I think the potential of this is very high, both in terms of offensive and defensive, but it may require hundreds of divines to get to the point where you're having a satisfactory amount of damage to go along with the crazy defenses that this kind of offers as a baseline. Getting over 100,000 each of armor and evasion by having level 21 or alt quality auras and everything. I mean, ideally both could be there. So yeah, there's a lot of potential. And then awakened gems as well, your awakened multi-strike, awakened elemental damage with attacks, that kind of thing. Could be very good. And 21 Nightblade's another big boon as far as getting attack speed, but I had to take the mass instead of the +3 levels, which I usually take if I don't have a level 21 Nightblade. I absolutely had to take the increased effective non-damaging ailments because I was unable to get the elemental focus, which would normally get that. I'm just missing out on a lot of that stuff. And I also can't fit cluster jewels because of how point starved this build is, which is a huge difference. Cluster jewels are great for this for the Frostblades Heatshiver build. So not being able to fit them in. Maybe you could cut out most of the top of this tree, kind of cut out Herald of Ice, maybe go for just a 3 aura setup and just stay down here and go swords or something and go a cluster jewel that way. That might be one way to fix this build. I don't have a whole lot of ideas, but overall, would I recommend the claw version of the Heatshiver Frostblades build? Nah, not really. I would say Trickster is still leagues ahead of champion. Later I'll respec this to try Slayer, Obviously, the setup's going to be different, so I'm going to need to farm up a lot of regret orbs to do that. But next is going to be occultist, because that's the next thing I'm most interested in, I guess you could say. Plan on doing Deadeye, Ranger, Assassin, possibly Elementalist. I might do Inquisitor. I might do Berserker. So I have a lot of different things to try out now. Inquisitor and Berserker are even farther away, so but they might have less hoops to jump through, offensively and defensively. So I guess we'll see. But for now, Occultist is next. Would not recommend. This has been Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming. Been a bit rambly, but I'll see you next time. Bye.